Welcome back to a new video. So today I am going to talk about all of the books that I read in September and October. Currently November 1st, so I thought I would do like a little reading wrap up. So I'm super excited to talk about all of the books that I read. This semester has been unusually busy for me. I don't know why or what happened, but I haven't had as much time to read as I would like. Send me as many books in this video as I would like there to be. But yeah, without further ado, I'm just going to talk about all of the books that I read in the past couple of months. Okay, so the first book on this list is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. So I touched on this book in a couple of my videos in the past. But it's just about a woman who is a surgeon or doctor. She's this very accomplished doctor, and she meets this guy who is 10 years younger than her. Kind of start like this casual relationship with each other. Parents disapprove, and she's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? This guy is younger than me. I don't know, I don't remember his job off the top of my head, but he's like a bartender or not something like as established. Or he's not as established in his career as she is, so she's kind of like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? This is like just a fling, and it's not going to lead anywhere, but eventually they have feelings for each other, and it just follows their story. This is the first book that I read by her, and I'm a huge fan. I think that the character development is great, the plot is great, really likable characters, both of them, which is kind of hard to get in a romance book because it's either like one character is super likable and the other one kind of sucks, or all of the supporting characters are bad. And read a ton of books, and a lot of them are very predictable and kind of the same. So I really like this book, and it switches things up. Read that book. I think I gave it 4 stars, so really highly recommend, and it was great. Then after that, I read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, and this is the prequel to the Hunger Games series, which I read back in literally 4th grade. There's a movie coming out, and I decided to pick it up and to read it. It happened when my friends and I were like, let's just watch the Hunger Games, and we watched it, and I was like, I forgot how much I love this series. And so then that the new prequel came out, I was like, well, might as well give it a try. And I really liked it. The only critique that I have is that it was really long. It was 400 to 500 pages. I personally thought that it could have been cut down about 100 pages, just because towards the end it kind of dragged on, and there was I don't know, a bunch of stuff happening. But this book follows President Snow back in the 10th annual Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is brand new, and it was the first year of each of the tributes having mentors. And Snow is kind of in this rough patch in his life, and he really sees this opportunity as a way to get ahead, establish himself in the capital scene. It's 10 years after war, so there's still a lot of rebuilding happening, and things like that. But I picked it up and I read it, and it was really good. There's a lot of rebuilding and stuff, and he meets the tribute, Lucy, who is from District 12. She's a girl, so it's very similar to Katniss, and they start to get to know each other. He really wants to help her out, but he also really wants to help himself out as well, because whole family's recovering from war. Yeah, I thought it was great. I loved seeing how the Hunger Games originated, and the backstory behind President Snow, because he's such an unlikable character that it was super interesting to see his whole character development, and how he why he is the way that he is in all of the Hunger Games movies and books. So yeah, I'm glad that I picked it up. It was just a little too long for me, so that's my biggest critique. I will definitely be watching the movie when it comes out. So yeah, I think I also gave it a 4 or 4.5 star. But highly recommend. And it was something different than I've been reading, because I usually stick to romance or fiction or historical fiction. So it was nice to pick up kind of a YA dystopian book. Kind of brings me back to my middle school days when I read Hunger Games, Divergent, The Maze Runner, all of those books that were super good. So yeah, I'm super happy I checked it out. And so the next book that I read is Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. So I also talked about this in some of my previous videos as well. It is the 3rd book in the Knockout series by Lucy Score, and it follows Lucian and Sloane. and they are childhood friends turned enemies to eventually lovers, and it follows their story. And in the first 2 books of the series, you kind of get like teasers of them together. They had a really big falling out, so you're always wondering what happened to them and why they stopped being friends. A couple of thoughts on this book. One, author didn't really focus on the romance between them. It seemed like the author focused on the romance between them for a while, like towards the last half of the book. The first part of the book was like a lot about the other couples, and I'm like, we already have their books, like why are you showing that to us? Like we already know that they're together. So she showed a lot of that and a lot of backstory, which was good. But then when you switch to the present day, they're like not together, or they're just with like their separate friends, or you're getting things of the other couple. So it didn't really feel like the story progressed until like halfway through the book. And these books are big. Like this one was like 500 pages. So like once you hit like the 250 mark is when it starts to get like really good and you see their romance. I was like, I don't know. If I wasn't already invested in the series, like if I didn't already read the first 2 books, like I don't know if I would have kept going on, because it just took so long to get to their romance. But nonetheless, I finished the book, I read it. But once I reached the other half, I really liked it. That was really interesting, but I don't know. I was kind of disappointed by it. I think Things We Never Got Over is my favorite one, which is the first book in the series. I think that the author did that book really well. Yeah, that's just my thought. It was kind of slow and like didn't really focus on the couple until the later half of the book. But if you like the series, like if you like the first 2 books, I would recommend reading it to finish off the series and see all of the couples together. Very nice. All of the books that I've been reading are on my Kindle. It's like I don't have room for any of my other books. The next book that I read is Tokyo Ever After by Amiko Jean, and I haven't seen like anybody talk about this book, but I loved it. I'm pretty sure I gave it like 5 stars. So it is a YA book. It's part of Reese's book club. It follows this girl Izzy who finds out that she is actually a Japanese princess. She never really knew her father, but come to find out, her father is like the crown prince of Japan. And so she finds that out and goes to visit her father and kind of like learn more about her heritage, where she comes from, meet her grandparents, all of that stuff. And she gets assigned a bodyguard who is like around her age, and you're in high school during this book. So she meets him, and he is obviously like gonna protect her. She's the princess, so he like follows her around. They get to know each other, but she's like, I can't stay here, like I have a life back in America. So it follows that dynamic as well, and I loved it. I think it was so good. If you like, it's more like lighthearted and fun and not as dark as other like adult books or like romance books. Personally really liked it. I feel like it fit like the best of both worlds of being YA, a really good romance, and having like a ton of fun tropes in it as well. So I really liked it. It was a pretty easy and quick read. It's only about like just under 300 pages. Highly recommend checking that out. It was a great book, probably one of my favorites that I've read this year, and I've never seen anyone talk about it, so I'm glad that I get to talk about it. I read Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. So this is a thriller suspense mystery book. I feel like all of his books are, but it follows this girl who is an apartment sitter, and she gets a job apartment sitting for a really prestigious apartment in New York City called the Bartholomew, and it like kind of looks haunted, and all of the terms surrounding the apartment sitting is really like sketchy. She's like, I really need the money. She was like on the verge of being homeless, doesn't really have any family, things like that. So she goes and she apartment sits, and it follows her around as she kind of figures out like some of the weird stuff happening in the apartment. Meets a couple of characters that she's like, okay, like this is kind of weird, certain situations that she's in, so it figures that out. It's best to go into it blind, in my opinion. That's what I did. The back is really like not descriptive about the book, so it's best to go into it blind. And I thought I knew what it would be about, but I was completely wrong. Totally caught me off guard. I was like, what in the world is happening right now? It was crazy. And I've never read a book like that before. So if you're in the mood for a thriller, suspense, action-packed, will catch you off guard book. Highly recommend that. My next book is Hello Stranger by Catherine Center, and this is one of her newer releases. I've read a lot of her, Catherine Center's books, and I love each one of them, so I was super excited to read this one. So it follows this girl who is a portrait artist, like that's how she makes her living, is painting people's portraits, and she has an accident and then is diagnosed with face blindness, so she can't like see people's faces, and so she's like, I don't know what to do, like I make my whole living off of being an artist and a painter of these people's faces, and like she can't really see. So it follows her. It's a romance book as well, so as she meets like a couple different guys, but like she can't recognize their faces. The two different guys, and she doesn't like know their faces, and she's like torn between them. It follows her. I don't know what to say without like spoiling it or giving it away, or like the big romance plot of it. Pretty lighthearted as well, so I really like that too. It's not too heavy of a book, which is nice because there will be some like romance books that you read and seem really like lighthearted and fun, like a rom-com, but then they have like a really sad backstory behind one of the characters, or it's like really dark for no reason and you're like, what the heck did I just read? So I really like her books because they are more on the lighter end. So the next book that I read is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Ponston, and this was on my fall TBR, so I'm super happy that I got around to reading it because I absolutely loved it. So a lot of her books touch on like magical realism, but not in like a fantasy way, but like a fun little twist in a romance book type of way. Those our main character Clementine, who inherits an apartment from her aunt that is stuck 7 years in the past. So when she goes to the apartment, it's like 7 years in the past, but then she's in the future, or not in the future, she's like in present day outside of it, so like 7 years in the future from the apartment, if that makes sense. It's a little bit confusing at first, but she meets this guy in the apartment, and it's hard because they're like 7 years apart from each other, like being in the past and then in the present, and they're trying to figure that out, but like I don't think he knows, or she doesn't think that he knows about it. So all of that stuff is going on while they're trying to get to know each other and just figure out their lives. So it's a fun romance book. It definitely puts a little twist on any other romance book that I've read, incorporating this like magical realism or just like time traveling, but not in like a fantasy sci-fi way, just like something fun in a book type of way, if that makes sense. So I really enjoyed it. I definitely want to check out her other books as well because it's a super great read. All of the characters are super likable. It's a fun fall-time book. It's set in New York City, so that's something super fun to read about as well, especially in the changing seasons. Pick that up and I definitely recommend it. That is the end of all of the books that I read in the past couple of months. I didn't get around to reading as much as I would have liked to, but college, school, life happens, so I'm glad that I got to read just in general because it's something that brings me so much relaxation and just like a really great hobby. So if you guys like these types of videos, please let me know, give it a thumbs up, and yeah, I like doing them, so I hope you guys like watching and listening to them, and hopefully you got a nice book recommendation or two out of this video. But other than that, I will catch you in my next one. Thank you for watching. Bye.